Hello and welcome back to the channel. Thank you for joining me in another of my wonderful interviews. Now, today you may remember that only yesterday I was talking to Mark Byford about farming. Well, we've had this lady on the show before, and she has two hats really, and I think they're getting slowly combined as the holistic approach to life is taking over on everything, on all fronts. So from the People's Health Alliance, which you may remember, and I've been involved in some of that, doing a bit of fundraising in Leeds, I think it was, to the People's Food and Farmers Alliance. And farming at the moment is that thing. Food security, of course, is another of those things which is beginning to ring alarm bells with the general public. And of course it should, because the one thing that's fundamental to all of us is we have to shove something into our gobs in order to survive, and preferably something nutritious and good rather than something highly processed or out of Bill Gates's imagination. So my guest is, of course, Katherine McBean. Katherine, lovely to have you on the channel once more. How are you?
Really well, really well. Very excited, very energized, and very positive about how things are going.
Oh, fantastic. Now, some people, of course, my audience comes and goes, like you would imagine, and some people may this may be the first time they've met you, heard about what you do. And I mentioned the two hats. So let's just go back a little bit to the Health Alliance stuff, because I know last year you were working very much heavily on that, of an alternative to the norm that we have been indoctrinated with over the past 80 years, I suppose. So could you just give us an outline on what the health side of the Alliance is about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the People's Health Alliance was set up in a response to noticing that there were going to be a number of NHS staff who wouldn't necessarily want to get involved with certain mandates and other things. So what we did was we appealed to the public and decided to take an integrated approach to health, so people have the option of choice whether you want to go down the allopathic route or a more holistic route. But it was also about educating people and how much we can do at home and how much we can look at natural remedies and work in a preventative way. And as such, we kind of mobilized the troops on the ground with through a variety of blueprints and presentations and workshops in opening up health hubs across their communities so that people could access healthcare who didn't necessarily want to access the NHS anymore or wanted to start looking at more natural approaches to their health. So there's now, if I'm right, because some have joined hands, there's somewhere between 80 and 100 health hub groups across the UK. But what's happened
Wow.
as a result is there's now 15 countries working towards building health hubs in their area. And I know Australia and New Zealand and places like that are already opened, and there are others. So it's been absolutely fantastic. But what it shows is what can be done by the will of the people, by the efforts and energies of the people. And as such, there's those that at the moment have had certain procedures and are unable to get the results they want from their doctors. Whereas a lot of these more holistic practitioners have a far open mind to looking at different natural therapies and remedies that are available and are having some impact, some positive impact for some of those people who have got certain injuries. So yeah, it's been absolutely incredible, and it's got to keep going from strength to strength. And it's down to we the people. That's who's making it happen.
And food, of course, is its own natural medicine and gives
Yeah.
us health. So we can move easily from health to food to where we are now with a bit of a food crisis and the advent of food security. With certain think tanks who decide that they ought to tell us how we should be eating and what we should be eating and what's good for us and what's bad for the planet and all that kind of rubbish that we've heard about. And so your other hat, which is intrinsically linked, of course, the People's Food and Farming Alliance. And I know that you've been very busy with that, and things are going from strength to strength there. So, and that's the main body of what we're going to talk about today. So tell us what's been happening.
So we set up, for those that aren't aware, we set up the PFFA back in September of 22, and it works on three strands. So we've got the Grow Your Own section, which is very education based, and we support it with presentations and workshops from actual genuine experts out there who've been doing this for a number of years. We also then have the community growing groups, which is encouraging groups to come together. Maybe you're in a more urban environment, you don't have as much green space, maybe you have small back gardens. So groups are coming together across communities to source little pockets of land, be it from a local farmer, because quite frankly, a lot of them cannot afford to farm all of their land at the moment. Could
No.
be local council, it could be something else. And it's been incredible over the last year watching these community growing groups start to form and come together. And again, we've worked with partners, we've worked with affiliates to collaborate and get the information out there from people who've already done it, to support the public working on this in their local area and getting these community growing groups off the ground. And then the third element, which is more so what I'm focused on just at this moment in time, is on the farmers and the producers. And what we originally set out to do and still very much stand by is supporting farmers to transition from a monocrop, monoproduct culture through to one which is more of a mixed traditional farming approach. Some call it regenerative farming. There's lots of names for it, but in all honesty, it's traditional mixed farming approach. And we were only getting so much joy with that one, because there was a lot of farmers who weren't aware of some of the bigger picture stuff that is now coming to the fore, which is having an impact on their farming. And there's three main areas that we're looking at as issues that the farmers need to contend with. Now, one is the regulatory bodies such as DEFRA and the Environment Agency, and the legislation and ridiculousness that they push out there to strangle farmers to not be in a position where they can grow food. They're being supported to not grow food. It's insane. The second issue is the supermarkets, be it the audits, be it the pricing issues that I think Mark discussed yesterday.
Mm.
The supermarkets are not playing fair with farmers. There's no way that farmers are going to be able to continue working to the prices they are. And the third element is the amount of issues that the net zero policies are causing. Again, supporting farmers in not growing food. And when you look back to the likes of DEFRA, which are obviously a government body, it does make you wonder what on earth they're up to when they're going whole hog at supporting farmers in not growing food. Surely food security and food sovereignty across the UK is one of the most important issues that any government should be focused on. And it's clear that the UK government, and should I go so far as to say the entire uni party, and I take all four main parties into that, are not doing what they need to do to support farmers. And so once again, it's down to we the people.
And isn't it true that the bigger plan that we've heard that is here for us is that in the future we will not import anything, and that we will be left on our own to grow stuff. Only we won't actually be growing stuff other than trees and solar panels. I don't know how.
And some nice flowers.
And some nice flowers, which of course is very good for the pollinators. But if the pollinators are not got any honey to give to, I mean, we'll only be eating honey, I suppose, because that'll be about the only crop that is growing, and plenty of beeswax. What are we going to do about this? Because we can't sit back on our laurels and rely on a government that seems to have policies which are really not humane or aimed at anybody surviving.
So, one of the first things we need to take into consideration is recently I've been connecting with a number of farmers, and it's become inherently clear that not many farmers fully understand the bigger picture here. They don't understand the long term goals of these rather shady organizations. And I include our government very much in that. They're just not aware. These guys are busy, they're out working
Mm.
really hard. A lot of them aren't businessmen in the traditional sense, and they certainly aren't spending necessarily all their time on social media, so it's not really on a lot of their radar. So what the first thing we're going to do is, and this will be out in just over a week, is we're putting together a video which explains to farmers in a bit of detail, although it's going to be short and snappy, but explain to farmers in some detail genuinely what the issues are, but not only what the issues are they face right now, what is that going to look like in the years to come? If anyone's interested, go and check out Sainsbury's. I think it's food Go and have a look on their website. It's Food Facts or Food Future. And if you go on there, they've got a plan up to, I think it's 2069, which is absolutely abhorrent. There's not one farmer on there. They are talking about manufacturing our food.
Let me see
So
if I can
ideally,
find it. I'm
yeah,
just going to see if I
it's
can find.
undercover and it's pretty repulsive. I think if you put Sainsbury's Food Futures in there, it's something along those lines. It's quite overwhelming when you sit and digest the reality of where they want to take this. And that's just Sainsbury's. That's not even the key supermarket. And if they're thinking this way, you can bet your bottom dollar the other supermarkets are thinking this way. And it looks like it eradicates the need for farmers at all. And that's quite daunting. That's quite
That is,
worrying.
and that's for a supermarket to come up with it. I think I've got it here. Not that I
Yep,
can see my
that
screen
looks like
anymore.
it.
Is that the one? Let me just move this over a little bit. Doing this live, ladies and gentlemen, as we
Yep.
record this, which is a bit of an oxymoron saying doing it live. But anyway, so yeah, and people can go. Now, I have seen this graphic before because I think this is implying that Sainsbury's want to be not only selling the stuff at the end, but also developing and growing this very strange type of food, which is more synthetic and full of petrochemicals and things than actual farmers doing it on the land. I
Yes.
mean, that might be a sweeping statement there, but that's what I understand.
Yep.
Beyond meat and fish. I mean, what does that mean? Beyond
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
which is beyond me. Food as medicine. Yeah, well, that's what traditional farming used to be.
Yes. Yeah. And it's manufacturing it, and they've got all their little images of bugs on there, cultured
Cultured
meat. There we
meat.
go. So I'd encourage your viewers to maybe take 5 minutes to go and have a look at that
Yeah.
and potentially think about getting that in front of your farmer. But we will have this video coming out in just over a week, I think it'll be right at the beginning of March. And what we would ask everyone to do is to get this to as many farmers' sites, farmers' forums, farmers' pages as much as you can, because it is so important these guys and gals understand fully what they're up against. It's not fair for them to take a step forward and not fully, it's like the informed consent thing. They actually need to understand really what they're facing and understand that the supermarkets, DEFRA, and so forth are not their friend. They're not to be negotiated with. In fact, what we need to do is move towards the eradication of these types of organizations. And so that's where PFFA also come into play. So it's all very well wanting to move away from these organizations, but what do farmers do? How do we get
Yes.
food? How do they deliver food? How do they distribute it? So keep an eye out, everyone. We've started putting out on our social media on Wednesday, the 6th of March at 7 p.m. We will be holding a open forum online on a Zoom. I think there's up to 500 places, so please do get registered now. And what we'll be doing there is, again, sharing some of the details of what the reality of the situation looks like, speaking to a couple of farmers and growers and people who are genuinely impacted by this and where they see it going. But the main onus of this presentation is we are working again, we're collaborating with partners and affiliates across the UK, and we're going to be sharing some of the solutions on how the public can genuinely help. When the No Farmers, No Food campaign started, it became inherently clear there are absolutely thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people across the UK who want to do something to help their farmers, but actually they're not really aware of how they can help their farmers. So,
Right.
what we're going to do is take this opportunity to share a plethora of ideas, and they're fundamentally focused about bringing in infrastructure at community level, which means farmers can distribute directly into the local community. Now, one of the reasons farmers are adverse to moving away from their supermarket contracts is A, they don't want to upset the public, B, they don't want to miss out financially, and C, they don't actually have any other option right now. And that's because I think it's been done very gently, very quietly, like all the things that these bad boys do in the background,
Yes.
but they have by stealth created an environment, which is why I picked up on it 25 years ago, an environment where farmers are encouraged to move away from being able to distribute directly. So what we need to do is there's a number of different things, but as an example, is to pressure our local councils to hand over local council industrial buildings that can be utilised as retail outlets that the public can sell the product on behalf of the farmer. Another one is things like veg boxes and delivery systems. And again, we've got a partner coming on to show what they're doing and how you can support that. And we can roll that out across the UK. We've been getting very excited at the idea of bringing about those little electric vehicles with a milkman in it. And we could
Oh,
utilize that to help distribute out farmers' products,
now
as
surely the
well as
government's got to
increasing.
be involved with that because they're EVs, aren't they? They love all those EVs.
And glass milk bottles, that's
But
recyclable. It's not a
yes,
big problem.
no,
But
absolutely.
they could sell products on there. We've got farmers markets across the UK, but they've become very artisan. For a lot of people, they're just not affordable. We need to bring back the regular bi-weekly, tri-weekly farmers markets that we used to have as of old.
Mm,
Another idea is a lot of the local small abattoirs have been closed down. And again, I think that's intentional personally. And it's a way of getting those back open and utilizing your power over the council. So we're going to be bringing along a specialist, an expert in how to approach your council, how to properly apply pressure, what are your rights, and how you can make demands of your council. So during this meeting, we're going to be unraveling a number of solutions that you can take with your community and go and push forward. If you want to save your farmer, this is how you do it. And another thing I think we need to bear in mind is this a way of saving our country? If they control the food, they control the people. Let's take
yeah.
away their ability to control the food and bring it back to the people. Once you do that, they haven't got many legs to stand on. That is the final, if you like, nail in the coffin. And if you genuinely want to save your country, get involved with this, because we need to get the solutions for the farmers. They don't have time, they don't have the resources. We, the people, will get the solutions for the farmers into place, and we take away the power of the bad guys as we do it.
I was talking to, and I think that's absolutely brilliant, by the way. I was talking to Mark yesterday, Mark Byford, as you alluded to there. And one of the problems, it seems to me, if a certain scale of farmers is it's very difficult for them to switch from one commodity, which is what they, sort of dealing with, whether it's just a grain of some description or milk or whatever, to then downsize some of that and reinvest in bringing on pigs or chickens or something else onto their farm, because they've been so streamlined into this one product, and then they've got these contracts which last X many years, and all this big machinery which of course they're probably paying loans off to pay. So they're in a bit of a pickle, even though they may want to change and can start to say, oh yeah, but I'm very much backed into this. Do you have suggestions for how they can get out of that?
So there is going to have to be a transition period. It's something we recognise completely. And longer term, there will need to be some investment ploughed back in. But obviously, whilst DEFRA hold the reins on the finances, it's going to be awfully difficult. So that's something that we will need to contend with moving forward. And I'm pretty excited for that battle. However, they can make a start. What we also want to see, and Mark actually spoke to a gentleman this week who's got one of the old traditional mills. Now, to fill my heart with joy, apparently a lot of these mills are still open, but they just plod along because they
When you
don't
say
actually believe.
when you say mills, what kind of mills?
So mills for processing flour, so taking the wheat, creating the flour, going down that road.
Like a windmill or a water mill?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure
And
we knew. I was,
yeah, no, that's absolutely it.
Yeah.
And what would be wonderful is for communities again to reach out to these guys and say, hey, we want you to start working full capacity again. We want to help you process this wheat or whatever the product may be
Yeah.
and get it out. Now, whilst the big, larger farmers are going to struggle for a little while, that's the reality. We can certainly help them start moving in the right direction. This is, I think, that the most important point is that people have to understand there will be a transition period. It's not going to all happen overnight, but it won't happen at all unless
No.
we get up and we get moving and start making it happen. And the sooner we can, the sooner we're going to end up helping every farmer. We're also, through PFFA, very, very aware that societal construct as it is means that often both mum and dad maybe are working, they work long hours, they're tired when they get in. It's very easy to lean into kind of the convenient option, the convenient food option. So we are going to be working with, again, other partners to start bringing just workshops to people on what's that way of basic cooking. What do you have as pantry items to help you make something from scratch? How can we do that quickly? But what this does is it highlights the bigger societal issues that we have that all need fixing, that we've been led down the road to believe, well, financially believe that both parents or both people have to be working. So parents, and quite honest, isn't it criticism, quite often don't have time to sit and cook a meal from scratch. And we get that. So there's a lot of elements that need to come into this to completely fix it. And it's going to take time, but we start now.
One of the things that I think has been lost, and I think is very connected to food, and not so much to the initial growing bit, but the bit that where the public are involved. And you see it in adverts, and I don't watch the commercial adverts on the television, but clearly I see them on YouTube because I do watch a few YouTube channels. And that is, every time you see all this food that's being advertised, you'll often see these quick TV dinners, and they are literally sitting on a sofa, eating their, sitting back, eating their dinner, saying, oh, it's marvellous and what have you. But actually what's happened is you've got something in front of you, you're shoveling it into your mouth, and you're watching a screen. The thing that's missing, and it seems to me this is the heart of so much, is bringing the family back, even if it's just one meal a day, around the table in which something has been cooked, preferably, fresh, organic, local, seasonal, and all of that, and that the heart of the family is there talking, and you're actually enjoying the food, and you're aware of the food itself, rather than being distracted by something on a screen or a computer game. Because it seems to me if you can get families interested in being together, and food is part of that, it's where community really starts. And of course, food is so delicious, not from a supermarket when it's highly processed and just gone into a ping machine for 10 seconds. And it's something that, different. You come out with a nice shepherd's pie or toad in the hole or whatever, whatever you're cooking. And I think that's, if we can get people interested, so cooking and bringing people around the table so they know, wow, I didn't know this tasted so, where did you get it? Well, I got it from so-and-so. And those old dinner parties that people used to have.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I force my kids for at least 5 nights of the week to sit around the table. That
Well,
that
good for
is kind of the
you.
compromise. It's the compromise. They're
Yes.
14 and 16, the little ones, so they're kind of at that age. But this morning, and I'm not, I'm not, again, not criticizing anyone. Everyone's got to find their own way. But
Mm.
I'm an exceptionally busy person. I'm a single parent. I don't have a lot of time in the day. I work incredibly hard. So I got up early this morning. I made a stew and I put it in the slow cooker. I then grabbed 20 minutes between meetings earlier to peel some spuds and chop up some broccoli and get that in the pots ready to go. So as soon as we finished, I go and spit the spuds on, get the dumplings done, job done. And it's not ideal and it's not perfect, but you do what you can with what you've got. So I think a bit of forward planning, if people can
Mm.
start thinking ahead, so often we're caught up with the day to day. But one of the biggest things I did, and I'll put my hands up, I went through a phase last year when I was really, really busy, and I was throwing out probably 3 nights a week, really rubbish dinners. I was pizza and chips, fish fingers and chips. I was going through a busy period. And then I stopped and I caught myself. I was wasting half an hour, 45 minutes a day on one of these things, caught up looking at social media, and I caught myself. And so I stopped it, and I now use that time to prepare some dinner and get things ready for dinner, and it saves time later. And I still don't get it right 100% of the time, and I still occasionally have to chuck a pizza in the oven. But if we can all start moving in that direction, just start thinking ahead, start planning your meals. And PFFA, like I say, we've got some incredible ladies who nailed this stuff down, and I'll be going to the workshops, but they will sit and take us through these things, all these little tips and tricks on how we can actually make cooking from scratch a reality in a very, very busy lifestyle. And one thing I would say is if you've got time this year, grow your own. Grow
Mm.
your own as much as you
Mm.
can. There is so much pleasure to be had from it. It's so good for our health. And at the end, you get tomatoes. So that's another way of, saving time, saving money, and having some fresh produce in front of you.
And that whole growing your own, and then bringing it onto the table is so good for the next generation, whose association with food is in a brightly coloured box that you put into a ping machine, and it's just fuel that is artificially flavoured and artificially coloured, full of chemicals which are doing them no good whatsoever. and no wonder they're knackered and tired and pasty and spotty and all those sort of things that we blame kids for. And if you can, if you can excite them with to me, food is the most fundamental thing, because without it, we do not thrive. That and water, of course. And it's something that we've just allowed to become something we take for granted. And I think with the farming and stuff, and people getting involved in some element of it, particularly with children, they do not know that there is this huge plethora of opportunities, jobs, lifestyle choices, fun things to do, which are connected to food and growing and farming, because they're being told constantly that it's a digital world, sitting in front of screens under artificial light, not moving and getting ill. And yet there's this huge amount of stuff that they could be learning, and they're so important because they're the next generation.
And I think they get pleasure from it. I mean, my kids, like I say, the youngest one's 14 and 16. So every time I go out to sow some seeds, I'm like, do you want to come? And they're like, no, why do I want to do that? But you go to them, right, George, I say to my son, can you go and pull up a couple of leeks for dinner? And he goes bustling out. He loves the harvesting part. He loves going and
Right.
picking it once it's ready. And so even if you can't get them involved at the earlier stages, get them involved towards the end, because then they start to see the reality and they're going and digging it out their ground themselves. And mum's going to cook that right now. And it actually is quite exciting, even for a 16-year-old lad. It's actually quite exciting being able to go and harvest the produce. Or when we get the bags of spuds we've been growing, and they tip them up. How many have we gotten here? How many have we gotten here? And then they get excited. So you don't give up. Even if your children, and little ones are easier, but even if they don't want to get involved with the sowing or maybe the weeding and so forth, get them involved with the harvesting, because that's when you start to see them show some interest. Well, certainly in my experience. And also it gets them off their screens. It's much better for their health. They're getting the fresh air. I mean, it's all the good stuff that goes with it. But this is an opportunity as well for their generation to understand the importance that food and food production, and I hate to use the word, but processing, because there's always going to be a limited amount of that, be it the mills and so forth.
Yes.
Can really generate, regenerate, re-excite local economies that are so stagnant at the moment. And there's no real input there from the food production industry anymore. It used to be across villages, across towns, that so many people are involved with the food production, and now it's so industrial. It's so industrial and it's so national or international. We've lost that local touch with our farmer. We've lost that local element. And I've seen the next generation, or certainly elements of our generation, starting to bring that back, starting to find new ways to be innovative at local level. Or maybe it is just adopting old traditions to help get the food ready and out to the people. And, the next generation are going to really re-energize our local economies by doing this.
Absolutely. I interviewed John Stone from Dora's Dairy, who is down near Swindon in Wiltshire. And he has, I think, 60 cattle on his dairy. He doesn't deal with the supermarkets at all. All his customers are local. He sells raw milk, which is fantastic. And he said it's doable to do that, but what we really need is 6 to 7 small local mixed farms, or farms that do 2 or 3 things and then another that do 2 or 3 other things, so they can communicate and help one another, dotted around the towns and the villages, so that they're supporting locally and in season. And the advantage of that is, of course, that you can go and you can see the animals, you can see the quality of how the farmer is doing stuff. And if it looks a bit dodgy or whatever, you don't buy from them. And if you don't buy from them, the farmer thinks, oh, I better up my game. Yeah. When you buy from a supermarket, you've no idea where the provenance of those products are. And you read on the label and it always says a product of more than one country. You don't know what country, at what time, by whom, where. And so I know people sort of go, well, what does it matter? But it matters so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
The mixed farm, tell us a bit more about why the mixed farming is this small bit, because I've been talking about it, but it's always nice to hear other people, because you're going to come up with some other things that I hadn't thought of, no doubt.
Maybe. I've always been an advocate for it for many, many years. When I started out on this about 25 years ago, that was the first thing that hit me. I was watching the supermarkets. I'll be there for the audits for different companies. And I thought, you're just leading them down one road here. I can see exactly where you want to take this. Now, there are a number of benefits to mixed farming to both the farmer and the consumer, and very, very importantly, to the land and the local environment around it. With mixed farming, the general idea, and this is on a very basic level,
Mm.
so the soil we've got at the moment across the UK is in dire straits, particularly the farmland. The grass doesn't look the same. The topsoil is like this when it should be like this. It's in pretty bad shape. One of the reasons being that farmers have tried to either graze the same cattle over and over on it. They've tried to put the same crops in it year after year after year, all the same vegetables. And the trouble is, what that does is allows for disease buildup. A number of different plants give something different to the soil, and different animals and their waste will do different things to the ground. So the idea is to actually have a rotation situation set up where certain animals follow certain crops, which are then followed by certain veg, and they benefit from what each other can do for the soil. So that's one element. The other element is ordinarily these smaller mixed farms have smaller fields, which is an opportunity to bring back hedgerows and trees that have been taken down for these monolith type machineries to get through,
Yes.
which are just impacting the soil and not really doing any benefit long term. Again, they'll be needed for a transition, but we want to move away from that style of farming. Another thing is if a farmer has a bad season, a lot of the crop farmers over the last 6 months have had horrific weather to contend with.
Had a lot
We
of
know what
rain.
that might be, right?
Mm.
But they've had horrific weather to contend with. So as a result, that a lot of crops have failed this year, and they're cornered. They are cornered right now. Now, if they have a bad harvest in terms of crops, if they had mixed farming, they could look towards relying on their beef sales, their pork sales, their egg sales, their veg sales. It gives them another route to market, or multiple routes to market, that they might miss out on if their crops fail. So there's that side of it. In terms of the local community, by having a number of mixed farmers around you, you have the benefit of having a plethora of nutritional needs met by the farms in your local community. And it's going to be far less processed, no chemicals. It's going to be clean produce that you'll be able to put inside you, which is absolutely magnificent. And again, it keeps the money in the local economy by working this way, which is incredibly important. And as time goes on, I think we're going to realize it's more and more important. Also, as well, by doing this, the farmers have independence. They're no longer relying on the big middlemen, if you like, the processors, the distributors, the supermarkets, anyone else to dictate to them how they should farm. Farmers know how to farm. Many of them need a little bit of support in terms of transitioning towards that more mixed farming approach. And that's something PFFA will be looking at in our fundraising, is to get an education centre set up where we can train people in mobile butchery, train people in mobile feed mixing, train people, have fifth, sixth generation farmers come in to train the newbies, the younger guys who've been indoctrinated into the new agricultural system through agricultural colleges on how to do traditional farming. And we want to get that education centre off the ground as soon as possible. And another thing, in terms of farmers working together, which is absolutely ideal, is between them they can grow the fodder crops they need. They can grow the food they need for their animals, because the feed industry is one of the most destructive. It's one of the most controlling, and quite frankly, a lot of farmers haven't got a clue what's in that feed. And I know
Mm.
that because I went and worked in the industry to find out more. So we want to get these mobile feed mixers up and running as soon as possible, so farmers don't have to lean or be controlled by the feed industry. Between them, they can grow what they need for their animals for the following seasons. The feed mixer comes along, mixes it all up to the right protein levels and various other things, and then it can be stored, and the farmers we've got it for the rest of the year. So again, less distribution issues, less distribution costs, and they retain full control over their own farms.
And of course, with livestock and stuff, if you've got smaller numbers of animals and they are on your farm, you don't have so much cramping and so much highly industrial, especially in the slaughter and all of that, and the fear which affects the meat. But also those processes, those medical interventions, I daren't say the word, that happen on
Yeah.
certain animals, and they're all being given these chemical injections, which is supposed to sort of help, but you don't need. I mean, I read a lot of old farming books. I'm a bit quirky, but
I'm
back in
like
the
that.
sort of 1920s and 30s, and you read about the stories of what they did. They're not talking about having to have millions of these injections and things to keep them going. In fact, it's very rare, and the idea of calling out a veterinary surgeon to come out is just like, oh my God, this is going to be so expensive. But now, like in life for us, we're almost like the cattle. We're encouraged to continually have these medical interventions given to us and these petrochemicals and various other slightly dubious substances shoved into us in order just to live. And that's not how we ever were. And
No.
it's not the same how animals used to be. And so to me, and I've said this umpteen times, I'm sure the audience are bored with me, but the last 80 to 100 years of this type of farming, this industrial, high industrial, global type farming, it's been an interesting experiment, if I can express it that way, but it's one of which we're now going, okay, we know the results from this, and it wasn't good. So let's return back to the 30s and before, but make use of the technology. It's not like you're going to not use the technology, but robotics and drones spraying and things like that does sound a bit anti-human.
Well, it's another reason for mixed farming as well, because I went and when I was working undercover, as it were, for a number of years, one of the areas I stepped into was biosecurity. Biosecurity. It's a very profitable industry, very profitable. I've looked at the margins, and they're going to use that to their advantage to sell more product. You only get biosecurity issues if you're keeping the same animals in roughly the same space and allowing for disease buildup. The
Mm.
mixed farming approach eradicates the need for that. And again, this is back, you're going right, 100 years ago. This was not an issue because they didn't have so many animals, and they certainly weren't just keeping them exactly the same spaces. They were moving them around, rotating them with the crops, as we've discovered earlier. So I absolutely agree with you. I look at books by people like A.G. Street and others who were written 100 years ago, and I revel and get very excited about the fact that actually we can bring this back. We can upscale it by having
Yeah.
more farms as we've got an increased population and so forth. But that doesn't mean the principles don't remain the same. They absolutely do. And so, yeah, through PFFA, we're going to be educating the public on what the reality looks like, where we really can save our country, how we can absolutely make a difference and take the control away from the bad guys, but also how we help our farmers genuinely. It's all well and good and lovely, and I thank you very much, to go to a farm shop and buy a bit of beef and this, that, and the other. But there's another reality as well, that the majority of the country cannot afford to go to farm shops. So we've got to make sure there's enough product coming in at community level that it naturally drives down the prices. So you might be able to, in a year's time, if we get this right, go to your local supplier and buy food at, say, Lidl's prices, but your farmer is getting goodness knows how much more profit compared to the
Yes.
pittance that they get at the moment by dealing directly. There may be one or two elements in that line rather than 10, 12, 13, 14 elements within that line. But by reducing that down substantially, that farmer is going to end up with a much better profit, and you, the consumer, are going to be paying a much better price. There is no downside to this. We've just got to get these guys through a transition.
When Julia and I have gone up to do talks near Leicester in Nuneaton, there's a farm shop that we discovered purely on chance, because when we're out and about and we want a meal in our van, we go to a farm shop, and so we'll search online. Oh, there's a farm shop there, and some are obviously better than others. I can't remember the name of it. Julia would tell me, and she'll slap me now for not knowing the name of it and plugging him. This farmer, he does a number of things. He's a mixed farmer. He has his farm shop. Very traditional, dresses very honourable gentlemen who come in and it's like good afternoon and all that. Very trained proper butcher, and there's obviously a line of farming history there. And he said the thing that really resonated with me, because we said, blimey, this is all your stuff, yes. And it's all, the pigs, yes. And the growing of the vegetables as well, yes. He said, we do get some bits and bobs from elsewhere, but it's mostly mine. And I said, but it's very cheap compared to, he said, I believe that we should be pricing our food for those people on lower incomes rather than those on the highest income. Why should people on lower incomes not be able to afford good food? And I can tell you, my heart sang to that gentleman. And any excuse that we're up in that sort of area of the Midlands, we'll detour to go and get his sausages or burgers or bacon or eggs or whatever it is, because that is the attitude. And he he says, I don't need to fleece them. I don't need to fleece anyone. We do it all here. We can do it, and so I think this is so doable. Will you have a big fight on your hands, because those that are making lots of money from the industrialized version of food, which is not really food at all, will not be too keen on this approach?
To be honest with you, at any point you stand up and try to do anything to save your country, you're going to have a fight on your hands. Now, is there a time for cowardice? No, it's absolutely a time for courage. It's absolutely a time for bravery. And what the beautiful thing is, every single day that passes, our numbers grow and they grow and they grow. There is no other option. If we
I
want to
was going
save
to
our
say, we
country,
haven't got
we
a
do
choice,
this.
have we, really?
No,
Yeah.
no. If we want to save our country, we need to do this, and we need to do this in our numbers. And I have absolute faith that all those who, if you like, are awake and aware to the bigger picture will understand the importance of this and how much we're taking away from the bad guys by doing this. Like I said, if everyone knows it, if they control the food, they control the people. We
Yes.
know by looking at the likes of Sainsbury's, which goes up to 2069, exactly where the supermarkets, DEFRA, government, and so forth want to take this. And it's up to us to say, no, we're not.
Yeah.
And literally, we're going to totally ignore you, and we're going to do exactly what we need to do. We're being lawful. We're not doing anything wrong, but we are absolutely taking away your power, and we're doing it now.
Absolutely brilliant. Your website, let me just flash up the website so people can go and check it out. Let me see if I can find it here. Here we go. And so it's the dash, I'll put the link in the description. It's the-pffa.org. And here you can find out all the information, the People's Food and Farming Alliance champions. Look at all that lovely food there. Those lovely tomatoes. I mean, this is the thing. The food just tastes so much. And for people who haven't, they know. I mean, because the trouble with my, not the trouble, but it is a trouble in some respects that the people watching this, they kind of on our side, they know what we're talking about. Look at those carrots. It's the people who aren't watching this, who are regularly going into the supermarkets, who do not really appreciate the taste of food, because they barely get a chance to taste all this luscious stuff, who we need to reach. But it's a very comprehensive website there, Katherine. And you can donate as well.
Good basics.
Which is rather good. Fantastic. And so you've got just remind us one more time. Oh, hang on. I'm going, we don't want Sainsbury's back on there. Oh, I've lost you. Hang on. Here we go. It's too much technical stuff. Get me away from it. Remind me again. Did you say it was the 6th of March? You've got your 500 in... you have to be registered to get on it, or you have to sort of take part in it?
Yeah, only because we've had, if you like, some people doing certain things on presentations before they shouldn't. So
Right.
we do ask everyone to register to make sure we don't have any issues there. If the numbers look massive, we might go all out and see if we can get a 1,000-seat one. But it's really important the public get involved with this. It's really important you're there. This isn't just about what PFFA are going to bring either. This is about some of our partners and the collaborations we've made and people who really understand what they're doing, to give you as many tools as possible so you can go and make this happen. None of what we're looking to do is perfect. We don't have all the funding in the world. We don't have all the time in the world. But what we do have is an army of people on the ground across this country who are prepared to stand up and save their country. And this is one of the most wonderful ways with which you can do that. So do look out for the weekend. So it's going to be the 2nd, 3rd. There will be a video coming out which is aimed at farmers and producers to help them understand fully the situation, let them know the public are behind them, and we're going to help bring the infrastructure to save them. And then on the 6th at 7 p.m. is the presentation, the public forum. So do come along and watch. If you do miss it, we will record it and share, but we want as many of you on there as possible because there will be a Q&A at the end.
Fantastic. And that video that you talked about just now, let me know when that's out, and I'll put it on the community tab on my channel to share it so people get to see it. Katherine, it is very exciting times. I know that, there's a lot of worry in the world, and, we keep hearing how it's all going down the pan. But actually, to me, this is a big, big chance to reset everything and come back where we want to be rather than where other people have designed it for us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Me too.
Katherine,
Me
thank
too.
you. Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us
Yeah.
about all what's going on with the PFFA. And of course, we will be keeping a close eye on that. Links will be in the description. But for the meantime, thank you, Katherine. It's been a joy to talk to you, and I'll be back with more monologues and more wonderful interviews. Until the next time, thank you so much for watching. Take care, everyone. From Katherine and I, goodbye.